Okay. It is fucking the same day. August 21st, 2019. Still Wednesday. Still sitting here. Yeah, comedy and jokes and stuff. So one of the things that I'm feel like is incredibly important is, and I keep saying it to people, and it keeps coming up, and I keep remembering Chris Rock, what he said in the HBO Talking Funny. He said the audience doesn't understand the premise, and that's why they're not laughing. That's not why they're getting the joke. And that is something that's just resonated with me as of recent a lot because I've been doing this recent stuff about childhood and death, which is incredibly morbid when I say it out loud like that. But it's actually in my head, it's uplifting. Like I want to see. It's kind of like a challenge. I want to see if how dark the subject matter can be, but how if just how you spin it, it can actually be kind of uplifting and kind of empowering. That's what I have in my head. The problem with that is that comedy is one of those things where you have to just fucking do it on stage. You can't. It's not like guitar. I can't practice these writing the line offensive jokes in my room right now. You have to. That's something. Okay, if anybody's listening to this ever that's not a comedian, that's something that's fucking irritates. I don't know about other comics, but it irritates me when people act is when a fucking musician. And by the way, I can say this because I'm also a musician. I play bass and I've been in a fucking band. I can say this. When a musician's like, "Bro, I don't get why you're complaining. I was just up there while they were talking and it was fine," or I was on stage and I didn't fuck up my song. And it's like, because you have band practice, you dickhead. You don't have to get on stage. You don't have to get on stage in front of random people having no idea what is going to happen. When people get offended by jokes, it's annoying because it's like the whole point is you're trying to get a laugh. That's what your goal is, but you have no idea what's really going to work. You can be really good. I don't give a fuck if you're Dave Chappelle, Jerry Seinfeld, fucking Joe Rogan, and I don't give a fuck who it is. I assume at that level, even at that level, you never really know. You can be really good, but you never really know. Or I could be completely talking out of my ass and I could be wrong. And every single time Ari Shaffir gets on stage, he knocks it out of the park. I have no idea. I'm not at that level. Not even close. But that's what I had imagined. That when you really have no idea what the audience is going to feel like. And so you do your best and you get really good at it. But I don't think there's ever a 100%. I don't think that that's how it works. And that was a good example of not thinking about myself and and worrying about other people's feelings. All right, before I get into this joke, in my head, I guess one of the better steps to getting to a place where you don't do that, where you don't dwell on other people's perspectives too much or other people's feelings too much. I think you still should to some degree to be a reasonable, empathetic person. But yeah, the way you don't dwell on it is first you gotta fucking acknowledge it. So all right, so I did that. We're past it. All right. Anyway, understanding the joke, understanding the premise. So I've been working on this stuff about death, and one of the things I was saying was it was something. It was like I think that kids should be introduced, I think kids should be exposed to death at a young age, because when a kid's exposed to death, they tend to become more mature or Batman. That was the joke. And in my head, I was like, that makes sense, right? Like the joke makes sense. It has a layer of like honesty. I do think that it that saying it makes a kid more mature is not a false statement. It has a more of a neutral connotation, even though it's something that's kind of fucked up. I think that the punch, the switch of it, that's go old fashioned bait and switch. I think that the switch of it, it makes sense, like it's logical to the context of it, and I think it's something that people wouldn't expect. And I was doing the joke over and over again, and sometimes people would laugh. There would be every now and again I'd get people that just fucking understood it immediately, but I couldn't get the whole audience. And what I think I figured out, and I only did it last. Hold on a second. Yeah, damn it. Okay, so I only did it last. It was the first time I did it last night. Was instead I was thinking like the punchline makes sense. Batman, that fucking it makes sense in the joke. But my issue seemed to be the setup, and that it was just too much in my head. You know, I don't know, whatever comedians listen to this, I don't know how you write, but in my head, I'm like, you jump from one idea to the next, and you're making these connections that make sense to you because you're in your own head, but you wouldn't necessarily make those automatic connections as an audience member or somebody that, even another comic, wouldn't make certain connections. Like, they're not thinking of things the way you're thinking of it, which I guess inherently makes jokes and is what makes a comic funny. But, like, you know, thinking in a different way. But I think the audience just wasn't making the leap with me. So then last night I changed it up a little bit, and it's still clunky. I'm still working it out, but the joke goes more like, how's it go? It goes more like, it's tragic when a kid has to experience death, especially of like a loved one or a parent. But if there was a silver lining in that, I think that the loss of a loved one, for a kid, the loss of a loved one makes you more mature, or Batman. Super fucking clunky. I need to iron it out and fix it up and shit, but that's where I'm going more with it. And I feel like that's going to lead, I feel like sometimes you got to dangle the carrot a little longer. Like you have to give them a longer time to figure out what the fucking point is that you're making. And from what I'm listening to, because we have a lot of new comics now, and by new, I think that I'm still very new. I'm at like, what, year 3 consistently? 4, maybe? I don't know. But I think what I'm seeing with these newer comics who are like a month or a couple months in is they're assuming that the audience is going to make the leap with them. Like in their head, they're assuming like, oh, this makes sense because it makes sense in your head. But for the audience, there are all these different types of people with all of these different perspectives and all these different experiences. So you have to do something that's going to bring them along, that's going to make them understand what your point is. As for how you do that, I don't think I have a really clear answer for that yet. I think that you just do your joke on stage, record it. For God's sakes, record it. Yeah, you got to record it. Like I see comics going up there and not recording it. Like it's like, how do you know what worked? Really, like when you're up there, you remember what happens, but if you're consistent, you're doing a show a night, fucking 5 nights a week. How are you going to remember the exact audience reaction to everything? You got to record it. I think comics. Oh, all right. Look, let's just acknowledge this now. I'm not talking about myself. Now I'm bitching about comedy in general. I'm aware of it. Call me a hypocrite. Whatever. I need to get this out. It annoys me. This is something that I would hear a lot is that it's too PC right now. It's too PC and and you can't say anything and everyone gets upset and yada yada yada. And it's so hard. It's so hard to do fucking comedy now because all people are recording you and people you're gonna get in trouble. And don't get me wrong, I understand that some people are losing their jobs and that's not okay. And I think that this cancel culture stuff is weird, super weird the way we're punishing people. But we have it pretty fucking easy in a lot of ways. We have social media, we can just put ourselves out there. I can record myself and put myself out there like this. You can listen to it, and if it's actually good advice, I don't know. So take this advice with a grain of salt. But if it's actually good advice, you're able to get that. Whereas when you're in the fucking 30s or 40s, no podcasts, and if you wanted to record your set, you needed to you needed to basically make an old school record player, just put that shit on the stage with you, lug it around downtown on a wagon. Like it's so we have a good. Fucking Lenny Bruce went to jail, guys. Like I don't think people I don't think people take into consideration, or comics take that into consideration. I would not go to jail over my fucking Rugrat joke. If the cops came in and were like, "Hey, don't make that joke again," I'd be like, "All right, okay, sure." I'd buckle immediately. Are you fucking crazy? That's like, so no. Yes, people can get mad. People can get mad, but just like just like we say when we're on stage, we have freedom of speech. They have freedom of speech too. It's stupid and it's fucked up and it's weird, and we got to figure out how to like keep it under control. But they have freedom of speech too. So if they don't like your joke, they don't like your joke, and that's fine. All right, off my soapbox, back to me. Yeah, I feel like it's just making sure the audience understands what the fuck you're talking about. And that's one of the things I'm going to keep working on, I think. I think that's what I'm going to focus on right now, is just making sure what I'm saying makes sense to everybody. So then it goes from that, what does it go to? Okay, goes from that to death. Okay, so then I think what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start putting the joke I'm about to talk about earlier on in the set. But I don't like these being more than like 15 minutes. So if this hits 15 minutes, I'm gonna make another episode. All right, so the joke goes, and I think I got something with this one. I think it's gonna make sense. I think it's gonna work. The joke goes, oh, shit. The joke goes, when I was a kid, I didn't think I could die until the day I rode my bike down the big hill. And so when I tell that part of the joke, it depends. It depends on the crowd. That's a really hit or miss moment. And I don't even know if you could call it a joke. It feels like, I don't know if there's a word for this, but it feels like a little laugh within a setup. You know what I mean? To the computer who's the cold staring back at me. But it feels like it feels like just a moment that every now and again gets people laughing. So it's like, yeah, so big hill, and then get a classic rule of three. So it's everybody had the big hill in their neighborhood. Maybe you called it the deep lake, or the neighbor with the shotgun, or the ice cream man with no permit. Usually the third one gets them, but there is something kind of wacky about the deep lake and then the neighbor with the shotgun. I feel like the second one pulls too much from the punch. Like the deep lake feels like it's still within reality, whereas the neighbor with the shotgun is getting a little, I don't want to say crazy, but it feels like it's too much before something that is especially wacky. So I feel like I need to change it, but I don't know what to change it to. So I guess I don't know if you give a shit about my comedic process, this would be a point where I would just sit in silence and I would go through just different scenarios of what is a little crazier, a little weirder than the deep lake, but isn't gonna take the shine from the punch. Isn't gonna I don't know. I guess the best word I can use would be isn't going to telegraph the actual punch. So yeah, that's something I got to work on with that joke.